There was a massive uproar in Pakistan's parliament upper house on Friday during voting for the Senate chairman's post. It was reported that hidden Chinese spy cameras were discovered inside the Senate hall while the voting process was underway. This led many MPs to cause an uproar in the Senate, and the voting process was disrupted. The Senate was holding a secret ballot to select its chairman and deputy chairman. Earlier, 48 newly elected members of the upper house took the oath. Senate elections were held in Pakistan on March 3rd for the seats for which current MPs were set to retire on March 11. Videos and images of the Senate that went viral on social media show the Chinese camera installations in the Pak Senate, leading all to ask one question: has this been aided and abetted by Xi's pawn Imran?
The chairman of Harvard University's chemistry department arrested by FBI agents, charged with lying about more than $1 million in payments from the Chinese government. A Boston University researcher accused of being a secret operative of the Chinese military. Another Harvard researcher caught at the airport allegedly trying to smuggle biological materials to China. All three incidents were this week, and they're not alone.
A Singaporean working for China has now pleaded guilty. The alleged Chinese spy pled guilty. Singaporean worked for the Chinese intelligence. Meenakshi, now a Singaporean citizen, has been held for spying for China.
Academic espionage is of particular concern. That some Chinese graduate students at the direction of the Chinese government are stealing research, much of which is funded by the U.S. military. This FBI document highlights a case at Duke University in the lab of Dr. David Smith.
In a microwave oven.
Dr. Smith, famous for inventing an invisibility cloak made of a material invisible to microwaves, something that captured the attention of even late-night comedians.
Working invisibility cloak.
And a young scientist in China, Rupan Liu. Liu came to study in Dr. Smith's lab, some believe on a mission from the Chinese government.
We know that the Chinese have a shopping list of intelligence and technology that they target every year. We know that the research that he took from Duke University was on that collection list, and we know that certain government officials and operatives met with him while he was in the United States.
Liu, who was being paid by the Chinese government while a student here, brought his colleagues from China to Dr. Smith's lab.
इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसी के इनपुट पर एक फ्रीलांस जर्नलिस्ट राजीव शर्मा, जो कि पीथमपुरा के रहने वाले हैं, इनको 14 तारीख को दिल्ली से गिरफ्तार किया गया था और इनकी इनिशियल इंटरोगेशन में ये मालूम चला कि ये कुछ चाइनीज़ इंटेलिजेंस ऑफिसर्स के टच में हैं और यहाँ इंडिया से कुछ सेंसिटिव डिफेंस इंफॉर्मेशन चाइनीज़ जो इंटेलिजेंस ऑफिसर्स थे उनको पास ऑन कर रहे थे। इनकी इंटरोगेशन के आधार पर ही आज सुबह एक चाइनीज़ नेशनल लेडी किंग सी, उसको गिरफ्तार किया गया और उसके एक एसोसिएट जो नेपाली सिटीजन्स हैं, शेर सिंह और राज बोहरा, उनको गिरफ्तार किया गया है।
Johnson, we begin with that breaking story. An officer accused of spying on Tibetans for the Republic of China.
CBS 2's Kevin Rincon live with the latest tonight. Kevin.
Maurice and Christine, that's right. That officer worked here at the 111th Precinct in Bayside. It was here he worked with the community affairs team. And this really does read like a TV drama. Officer Badamaje Angwang, a member of that community affairs unit at the NYPD, is accused of spying for the Chinese government, of trying. The FBI says he worked alongside two officials at the Chinese consulate in New York. Investigators have tapes of their conversations and other communications. Federal prosecutors say Angwang also provided intelligence on Tibetans living here in the city and throughout the area in exchange for money. He's also accused of offering those Chinese officials access to senior NYPD personnel. Members of the Tibetan community I spoke with here in Queens say they're not surprised.
Another major story tonight, the arrest of a Northern California man accused of being a top-secret spy for China. Jeff Pegues has the undercover video that led to the bust amid a growing intelligence threat from across the globe.
Surveillance video shows Edward Pong, a naturalized U.S. citizen, wrapping $20,000 in cash and taping it under a TV stand in a hotel in Columbus, Georgia. About 3 hours later, he's back to pick up an SD card containing classified national security information. A double agent working for the FBI had left the card in the drawer before taking the $20,000. The so-called dead drop was one of 6 that took place in Northern California and Georgia. Fong was working as a San Francisco tour guide for Chinese tourists. But U.S. Attorney David Anderson says he was actually working for the People's Republic of China.
Pong was a secret agent completing dead drops, delivering payments.
Authorities say the double agent penetrated the spy ring in the San Francisco area in 2015. The agent was directed to Pong, who would pick up the memory cards and fly them from the U.S. to China. Former CIA Acting Director Michael Morrell says the spy game between the U.S. and China is on the rise.
This arrest is the 4th case we've seen of Chinese espionage just in the last several months. I think it's both a reflection of how aggressive the Chinese are being and how aggressive we're being in trying to push back on it.
It's a story straight out of a spy novel, alleging steaminess and skullduggery stretching from China to Capitol Hill.
Her name, Christine Fong, and according to an Axios investigation, a suspected Chinese intelligence operative who targeted up-and-coming politicians from 2011 to 2015. It began years ago, it is alleged, through charm and campaign fundraising.
Hoping to gain people's trust so that she could perhaps in the future help them change their mind on China policy and just generally give the Chinese government close insight.
Axios reporting that Fong even wound up in romantic or sexual relationships with 2 Midwest mayors.
So as they looked further into what she was doing, there were some major red flags, and they put surveillance on her, and that's when they picked up some of her sexual activities and realized that she was getting close to some politicians.
But the biggest fish she targeted, according to Axios, California Congressman Eric Swalwell, a Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Fong was a fundraiser in Swalwell's 2014 campaign and helped get an intern a spot on his staff. An FBI counterintelligence team was so alarmed by Fong's efforts, according to the report, they alerted Swalwell, who immediately cut off all ties and says he offered help to the FBI. He is not accused of any wrongdoing. It was around that time...
What you're saying, your job was to meddle in Taiwan's upcoming presidential election secretly for the Chinese government.
Yes, that's why I needed to change my name and not use my true identity.
Was your ultimate aim to make sure the current president of Taiwan was not elected?
Yes. Taiwan was the most important work of ours. The infiltration into media, temples, and grassroots organizations.
This week, Taiwanese media reported police had detained the man Wang identified as his boss and a high-ranking military official for China. It's believed Xiang Xin and his wife were intercepted at the airport as they tried to leave Taiwan for Hong Kong. They were questioned on suspicion of violating the National Security Act.
Federal officials say they believe the arrest of former CIA officer Jerry Lee helps explain why CIA operatives and informants in China ended up getting killed 8 years ago, a stunning setback for U.S. intelligence. Current and former U.S. officials say the investigation also exposed an apparent compromise of U.S. spying in Russia. Lee appeared before a federal judge Tuesday after he was arrested last month, arriving on a flight from Hong Kong. Court documents say he illegally possessed 2 handwritten notebooks containing names and phone numbers of covert CIA employees and informants. But several federal officials say Lee is suspected of giving the Chinese information about those operatives, and that at least 10 of them ended up getting killed by the Chinese.